Hello and good evening everyone. Thank you for joining me in today's session. So today in this session we are going to begin this project, C functions and also nested loops. So before everything we need to first understand what a function is and also what a nested loop is as well. So a function is simply a collection of code that is used to solve a specific problem. Okay, that is used to perform a specific task. For example, let's say you have a program, or inside your program you want to write a function that will add two numbers, right? So instead of you to always be writing the code that will find the summation of these two numbers every time you want to use it, you can just write a function whose purpose, which purpose of the function is going to be what? Simply adding these two numbers. So anytime, anywhere in your program you want to add two numbers, you just simply need to call that function, since that function is responsible for adding two numbers. So you just call the function and say, hey, perform this summation for me, and then the function will perform the summation and it will display the result for you. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you an insight of what a function is. So like I said, function is just a collection of code that is used to solve a particular problem. So you can write a lot of functions in your program. So a common example of functions is the int main function that we've been using in our C program. Okay, yeah, you know that whenever we write our program, that int main function is a must. Right, you need to have that main function for your program to compile without any error. So that is also an example of a function. So let me just explain this here. So how do you create this function? So to create a function, the first thing you need to do is you need to declare, or you need to tell the return type of that function. For example, I said, let's say I want to add two numbers, assuming 1 and 2. Right, you know that these are counting numbers, not floating numbers. They don't have any decimal point, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counting numbers, right? So let's say I want to add numbers, and these numbers I want to add has to be one of these counting numbers. So you know that it cannot take float, right? So definitely if I'm to add any two numbers from the counting numbers, it is going to return what? An integer. Right, if you remember your data type, that is an integer because it doesn't have what? A decimal. Since it doesn't have a decimal, it means it is an integer. So it means my function is going to return the summation, right, which is an integer. So the first thing I need to put here is what? Is int. So this int is telling the function that, okay, I'm expecting you to return an integer value. Do you get it? If it is a character value, you need to pass in what? Char here instead of int. But here I'm using int because I've already give an example of what? Of int, right? So the next thing is you give your function a name. What is the name of your function? In my own case, let me call it add, since it's going to what? Add two numbers. So now my function name is add. So anytime I want to call the function, I will call it by this name here, add. Okay, so the next thing is what? The next thing is you need to specify how many parameters your function is going to take, including their data type. So my function is going to take two parameters, like I said, because I want it to sum two numbers, right? So it's going to take two numbers, and all these numbers that it's going to take, what is the data type? It is an integer. So I would just say int, and then let me just give the variable a name, any name. You can give it any name. Okay, so int a, and then what? A comma here, and then int b. So it means that it is going to take two integers, each of what? It's going to take two parameters, each of type integer. Do you get it? So inside here, now this is what? The definition of the function. So inside, or here, you need to open a curly brace, and inside this place here, you need to define how the function is going to work. So in my own case, I want to add these two numbers. So I will just say my function should return what? I'll just say return a plus b. So what it's going to do is that whatever is passed to this function as this first parameter and whatever is passed as the second parameter, the function is going to sum them and it is going to return the value. So that is why I said it is going to return what? An integer, int here, because a plus b must be an int because the parameters that we are summing are all integer. right? So then you close this here. So this is just a simple declaration and also definition of a function. Okay, so one thing you need to understand here is this portion here, this part here, this is called the function prototype. Okay, it is called the function prototype. And for you to write any function, you need to declare the function prototype. Just like the way we normally declare any variable before we use it, right? For us to use any variable, let's say ij, we need to say int j or something like that. We need to specify the data type, right? That is declaration. So you need to declare your function as well. So this is what you need to declare now. This is called the function declaration or prototype. It is mostly called the prototype. So it's the same thing as the declaration of the function or the function prototype. So any function in this format, its prototype is simply the return type with the function name and also the parameter that the function takes. So in our own case, this is our prototype. Let me rewrite this. So it's going to be int, right? Then add, then in bracket int a comma int b. But in this case, since this is a prototype, you need to add what? A semicolon at the end. This makes it a prototype. So for you to use any function, for you to write any function, you need to do something like this. You need to declare this. Do you get it? So the declaration of this or explanation for the on how to declare this brings us to what is called the header file. So where is this declaration taking place? Where do we need to declare this variable? Sorry, this function here. You can't, or it's not right to declare this variable inside your what? Your main file. So the best way to do this is to declare this variable in another file which is called the header file. The header file ends with what? A .h extension. So any file you see with a .h at the end, it means that that is a header file. So one of the uses of the header file, there are a lot of uses actually of the header file, but for now we are going to focus on this. One of the uses of the header file is simply declaring the function. So this function prototypes you are seeing here is going to be placed inside our header file. Okay, like I said, it's not proper for you to write it or to display it inside your main file. So the best way to do this is to take it into that .h file, which is called the header file, and you put the declaration there. So inside your main file, you now include it. Don't worry, if you don't understand what I'm saying here, we are going to see practical example on how to do that. So here I'm just trying to give you an idea of what this is. So this is the prototype, and I said we are going to paste this in what? Our header file, right? So let's do this on the terminal. This is my terminal. Let me zoom a bit. So let me just create a file. Let me just call it tests.c, right? So the first thing we need to do is #include stdio.h. This is what? A declaration, right? A simple declaration of stdio.h. So this is what? .h extension, right? Sorry, yeah, a .h extension. It means this is a header file, right? I've already explained this when we're talking about the first project, right? We've already explained the stdio.h header file. So what's the next thing we need to do? So here I will just say int main. This is an example of what? Of a function here. So void. It means that whenever you see this void, it means that the function is not taking any parameter. Okay, so here as well the return type can be void. Instead of int here, it can be void. This means that what? The return type, the function is not going to return anything. So anywhere you see void in place of this, it means that the function is not going to return anything. Okay, that's just what this is trying to say here. So I have this, or before this, let me create my function. Let me just say #include. Let me call it main.h. Okay, I'm going to create my header file called main.h. I'm just trying to explain to you what the header file is. So here I will now declare my function int add, right? Sorry, define the function. I said it's going to take two parameters and also int b here, right? So here I will now define how the function is supposed to work. So I will just say the function is going to return a plus b, right? That's how the function is supposed to look like. isn't it? So I will now create the header file now. So let me call it main.h. So inside this header file, like I said, this is where we need to paste the prototypes of all our functions, right? But before that, there is something we need to do in any header file that we create. We need to guard the header file. Okay, so there is something which is called the include guard or the protector of the header file. So what this does is simply it prevents double inclusion of the header files in any of your program. Okay, so the first thing we need to say is hash if not defined. That's what this means. So if not defined, what is our file name here? It is simply main.h, right? But in this case, you are not going to write main.h. Anywhere with dot, you just add underscore with h here. Okay, as you can see, everything here is in capital letter. So just put it in capital letter. So this name can change. But the reason why I'm using main.h here is because it is more descriptive, right? It is more descriptive because the header file name is what? Main.h. So if I do something like this, I think it is more descriptive, right? So I have this now. If not defined, main_h. So what this is going to do is that if this main_h is not defined in any function, oops, what did I do here? Okay, if this main_h is not defined in any program, so it is what? Going to define it. So it will jump to this part here now. Define. Sorry, I'm supposed to say define. Wow. Define. Right? So I'll just say main_h. So if it is not defined, right, in any file, if the main.h is not defined in that file, so it will jump to this part and define it. If it is already defined, then there is nothing to do about it. So this way we are going to prevent double inclusion, because without this, there are cases that you will include your header file multiple times in a single file. So when you do that, the prototype, or there will be different, or there will be declarations of variables or whatever, it will happen a lot of times, many times, right? Because you are including it how many times? Assuming you're including the other file 4 times. So there will be variable declaration. Let's say we have structures, they will declare structures 4 times, all these things. So to avoid all these errors, that's why we need to do this here. Do you get it? So, and here we now say end if, not in caps, sorry. So end if. So for you to have any header file, you need to do this thing. Okay, you need to do this thing. So the next thing we need to do, like I said, is to add our function prototype. So what is our function prototype? It is what? Int. Don't forget the function I just wrote. Then it takes in what? 2 parameters, int and int. So if you like, you can add in the variable just like the way I did in the definition. And also, if you like, you can remove the variable name that is inside this header file. But you can't do this when you are defining the function. But when you are declaring the function, you can do this. Okay, so here you add a semicolon. So that's it. So let's end this. So the next thing is I will just create a file, or let me just do this inside the same test.c file I created above. I'm just trying to explain the concept here. Okay. So here I will just say, let me just call my int main function here. So void, right? So inside this int main function, I'm going to call my function now. What is my function name? Add, right? So I'll just say add. So assuming I want to, let's say I want to add 5 and 2, for instance. So I'll just say 5 and just say comma 2 here. So that's all. So I'm expecting this to return the value 7. Okay, when you look at this, I call the function by its name, and the function takes in what? 2 parameters. So I pass in the parameters here, and also I created a header file in which I pasted this function prototype there, right? So now let me just compile this. Let me just say gcc test.c, right, -o, right? So let me just call it t, for instance. All right, so let's run this. Okay, sorry, I need to say here, let me just use printf. So I'll just say printf is because here I did not say the answer should be printed. I just say it should be returned. Okay, I just say it should be returned. So I need to use printf to print the value. So here I will just say printf. So I will just say %d, since I'm printing what? Decimal, right? since I'm printing decimal. So here, yeah, so I think it should work now. All right, so I think this should now work. This should print 7 for me. So let's compile again. GCC, what happened? Okay, I use printf without including the library, so I need to say hash include here stdio.h. This is the standard library for the printf, right? I'm sure this is not something new. All right, so let's run it. So did you see I got the value 7, right? So I'm able to write a function now that will sum up 2 numbers, right? So let's say I want my function to take 3 variables. So I'll just come here and say comma int, let me call it c. So from here I will now pass in another variable, let me just say 3, another parameter. So I need to go and make corrections inside my header file, right? So I will just say main.h. so here I need to tell my header file that, okay, expect what? Sorry, my prototype, expect another parameter of type int. Okay, so let's compile this again and let's see. I'm supposed to get the value 10 now. Sorry, did I miss something? Did I compile? vi int each of type int, like I said. Sorry, seems like I'm missing something somewhere. Int add int a, int b. Okay, here I need to add plus c, right? Plus c. Now I have 3 parameters. So I'm expecting this to return or to print how many? To print 10. So let's see. So did you see that? Now I got 10. So this is simply how to write a function. Okay, this is simply how to write a function. So function is used to what? To kind of solve a particular problem. So anytime now I want to add 2 numbers or 3 numbers, I just need to call the function add and then pass the parameters to it. So as you can see, this has eased some work for me, right? So that's just the work of what? Of a function. That's just what a function is. Okay, so here the next thing we need to talk about is the nested loops. So a nested loop is simply a loop within another loop. We've seen loops when we're talking about conditional execution. That is the if else, right? We've seen the while loop and also the for loop. So a nested loop is just a loop within another loop. Okay, so here, make sure you go through these videos here. Sorry, this material here. I've already explained the concept here, so you can just go into the material to get a clear understanding of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so now this video is simply meant for explanation. So in the next video we are going to begin solving examples on this particular project. So thank you very much. Till meet in our next session.